Hey Wargamers, today we're going to continue our 2019 update series by talking about XV8 commanders, basically their strengths, weaknesses, and how you might want to use them in your Tau army. Now, there are three different types of commanders. There is the Enforcer, the Cold Star, and the XV8. I'm going to talk about each of those in their own videos, and of course today we're talking about the XV8, but when we talk about the XV8, there are generally two questions that I see popping up on the internet quite a lot. One is, where do you get an XV8 commander? Well, the answer is very simple. You get it from your XV8 Crisis Suit box kit. There's no special XV8 commander model like there is for the Enforcer and the Cold Star. Those guys, they have their own model. They're bigger, they're larger, they do things that are different than a standard Crisis Suit, whereas the XV8 commander is just a commander in a standard Crisis Suit. So you can use whatever Crisis Suit you want as long as it has the right war gear. Now the second question is, why would you bother taking an XV8 Crisis Suit commander over one of these hella sweet Enforcers or Cold Star Battlesuits? And the answer is pretty simple if we just look at the different loadouts for those commanders. The Cold Star is offering a lot of maneuverability, although at a premium. It also has a limited weapon set. The Enforcer has more wounds, but is at its base a little bit more expensive than the XV8. And the XV8 has a potential to be cheaper than the Enforcer, plus the option to take Iridium armor, which the Enforcer cannot do. So you can potentially run it to be cheaper, you can potentially run it to be a little bit more durable. Either way, you have some flexibility with the XV8, and that's really what the XV8 commander is for. Just like its elite brethren, the XV8 commander is a flexible unit. So let's get into it. Let's talk about its strengths and weaknesses, starting with the profile. So for about 150 points, depending on how you load it out, the commander has movement 8 inches, weapon skill 3 up, ballistic skill 2 up, strength 5, toughness 5, wounds 5, attacks 4, leadership 9, and a 3 up save. The commander comes stock with a missile pod and burst cannon. You can switch those out, plus have 2 additional slots for a total of 4 weapons or support systems. He can also take Iridium armor, which we'll talk about in a moment. As far as special rules go, the commander has access to the Master of War ability, allowing him to call Cao Yun or Man Ka once per battle. He also has For the Greater Good, like most Tau. And then he can Manta Strike because he's in a Crisis Suit. So 3 really good options. Of course, Master of War is going to be the best of those 3 for him because that is a huge force multiplier. In particular, people are going to be using the Cao Yun option quite frequently in order to allow your nearby units to reroll all their missed hits in the shooting phase for 1 turn. So calling Cao Yun is going to be really advantageous earlier in the game when you can leverage that special rule to its maximum effect, assuming everything is in range. Sometimes turn 1, sometimes turn 2, that's when you're going to want to be calling Cao Yun because, of course, if you wait till later in the game and you have fewer units, you're not actually going to be re-rolling that many shots. If you can do it on turn 1 or turn 2, you're going to be maximizing your number of shots and therefore maximizing the utility of Master of War and therefore the utility of your commander. It also has an extra perk that if your commander is loaded out with relatively short-range weapons, that he's not going to be able to shoot anyway, so you might as well call Cao Yun, use him to do things like command and control node, and boost the ability of your nearby units while not really giving up anything. So Cao Yun turn 1 or turn 2 with this guy is fantastic. The commander has access to the same weapon options as Crisis Suits do. So if you're curious about those options, go ahead, check out my Crisis Suit video. Essentially, the relative strengths and weaknesses of each weapon are exactly the same. It's just on a different chassis. It's just on a commander instead of a standard Crisis Suit. And really, though, just like Crisis Suits, the question comes down to how do you load out your commander? What weapons do you give it? Do you use support systems? Anything like that? And the answer actually is kind of surprising. Now, commanders are renowned for their high ballistic skill and lots of weapons. Yes, these are why we bring commanders, is because they're good at shooting. So if that's the case, kind of the intuitive response to how do you load it out is, well, do whatever you want because they're going to be great. The answer is actually no, don't do that. As far as Crisis Suits are concerned, I look at 3 main weapons. I look at missile pods, I look at fusion blasters, and I look at cyclic ion blasters. And for Crisis Suits, each of those have their strengths and weaknesses, but for a commander, if we look at point efficiency, recent reductions in the cost of Crisis Suits make Fusion Blaster Crisis Suits actually more points efficient than a commander with Fusion Blasters. So if we're looking at Fusion Blasters, keep them on your Crisis Suits. Similarly, if we're looking at missile pods, broadsides are a much more points efficient option for delivering missile pod hits than a XV8 commander with missile pods. So both of those weapon options actually are less efficient on a crisis commander than they are on their elite or heavy counterparts. So really, we're looking at Cyclic Ion Blasters. Cyclic Ion Blasters, fantastic weapon. It has pretty decent range, 18 inches. Yes, that's the same as a Fusion Blaster, but the Fusion Blaster wants you to be within 9 inches really to get the most bang for your buck. Cyclic Ion Blaster doesn't care. You can be at 18 inches, 17, 9 inches, whatever. As long as you're within 18 inches, you are getting the same efficacy of that Cyclic Ion Blaster as anything else. So, being at 18 inches is pretty advantageous for a crisis suit, especially one that's a character that you want to be shielded by other units. That gives you plenty of room to position drones, other units in between your enemy and the commander, and keep them at arm's distance. Additionally, the Cyclic Ion Blaster has a nice volume of fire, 3 shots, and you can overcharge it and kind of ignore the overcharge penalty if you have the appropriate marker lights or anything like that. So really, we're dealing with a highly flexible, highly effective weapon, especially for targeting things with an invulnerable save. Cyclic Ion Blasters are more points efficient against things with invulnerable saves than Fusion Blasters, and therefore a fantastic choice for a commander. So as far as the loadout goes, really, we're looking at Cyclic Ion Blasters as our primary weapons on an XV8 commander. Of course, the question always comes up, do you want to take support systems? No, don't do it. They lower your point efficiency dramatically. Yes, you can gain some kind of niche superiority in terms of advanced targeting system or a shield generator, but no, overall, if we're looking for total damage output, which really is, again, one of the reasons why we're bringing in Commander, we want to have 4 weapons on the Commander, not 3 in a support system. Of course, because it's a commander, it has access to signature systems. So one thing that really I like is the Supernova launcher. That's the special airburst fragmentation projector. Don't bother with a standard airburst fragmentation projector. It's not worth your time, but the signature version is actually quite effective. And so I like to pair whatever commander I'm taking with one of those guys, although really that's more of a playstyle tactics question. If you're looking for something simple, straightforward, just go with 4 Cyclic Ion Blasters. You'll be happy. As I mentioned before, the XV8 commander has the option of taking an Iridium Armor Battlesuit, which gives it a 2-up armor save instead of a 3-up armor save. For 10 points, why not? That's pretty awesome. So having a 2-up save is fantastic. It's going to save you a lot of pain in the long run, and a lot of the time that's actually more advantageous than having the extra wound that you get from being in the Enforcer battlesuit. So really, I think the 2-up save is a good bet. If you're behind cover, that means that you can actually ignore a whole point of AP. Otherwise, you're essentially ignoring a point of AP anyway, just because you're 2-up instead of a 3-up. So even something that has -2, -3 AP, you're still getting a respectable number of saves compared to what you would have otherwise. So yeah, having that Iridium armor, if you're taking an XV8 commander, definitely do it. It's worth it. The other option that the commander has, in addition to its weapon loadout support system, signature systems, and Iridium armor, of course, are drones. And frankly, you probably shouldn't need to bring drones with your commander. There should be plenty of other drones hanging around your army to do savior protocols for your commander, and your commander, especially if he's in an XV8 battlesuit, should never be off on his own. He should always be positioned nearby other units that can prevent targeting against your commander, and also be surrounded by drones for him and those other units. So really, don't take your drones. You'll have access to plenty of other screens and drones in other places, ideally. And then, additionally, if you were to take drones, you'd only have 2, and that's a really easy kill point. So don't do that. In general, I shy away from taking drones on characters exactly for that reason. If I want them, I'm going to need more than 2, and so I will be bringing plenty of them to support that unit. As far as Sept choice goes, well, commanders work well in any Sept. There's a few places where I think that the XV8 commander in particular isn't quite as good as potentially other options in the HQ slot, including other commanders. For one thing, for the Sakia Sept, Sasia, however you want to say that, I think you're much better off taking something like an Ethereal as your HQ there. Generally, people are playing Sakia, taking an Ethereal and 3 Firesight Marksmen. You don't need to have a commander in that option. Your commander, because he hits on 2s, yes, having the 1 reroll would be nice, but you're really, you're going to be hitting most of the time anyway. It's not like you're, banking on that 1 shot getting through. So for the most part, I think anything except for Sakia is a pretty good choice. Really, though, we're looking at Tau Sept, of course, as being one of the strongest. Viorla Sept also being very strong because it allows him to move and shoot, taking greater advantage of that 18-inch range on your cyclic ion blasters. So, yeah, Tau Sept, Viorla Sept, those are my favorite Septs. Applies for commanders as well. Overall, how would I run a commander? Well, I'd take 4 cyclic ion blasters and a Iridium Battlesuit, no drones, pretty straightforward, play it as Tau or Viorla, depending on what the rest of my army looks like, and position him either in Deep Strike, if you are Deep Striking in things like Crisis Suits, or probably more likely, deploy him in your gun line there so he can call Cao Yun turn 1, command and control node your broadsides or a Riptide or something like that, and be kind of an anchor point on your gun line on turns 1 and 2, rather than being kind of an aggressive unit with some Crisis Suits. And the reason why that's less likely is just because people don't bring Crisis Suits as often as other things. So for the most part, you're going to be looking at your XV8 commander being a gunline commander and not necessarily deep striking, but he does have that functionality if you are looking to build a list that's more aggressive like that. All right, so let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you run an XV8 commander, or do you go opt with an Enforcer or a Cold Star exclusively? Either way, let me know. And of course, thanks for watching and happy wargaming. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there and continuing the discussion on Facebook or Discord. Special thanks to Aaron Fox, Shifty, Jim Bob, Scott Heater, Nick Steele, Jared Egler, Tao Oswell, Zach Brooks, Stephen Cohen, Jake Johnson, Eric Jackson, Zealous Brimstone, Evan Wells, Benjamin, Julian Peck, Andy M. Young, Giovanni DiMaggio, and Chris Kessler.